Chitose is a pretty popular guy, often compared to Neymar because of how many girls are always around him. But everything changes for the better when he realizes his female friends want to leave the dreaded friend zone behind and have some flirty fun with him. So, he decides to grant their wishes, in his own way, of course. The story begins with a group of students searching for purpose amid youth, carried by the uncertainties and melancholy of the world around them. At the center of it all is Chitose, an ordinary student attending an ordinary school, living the start of another school year filled with routine activities, but with the hope that one day he'll look back on these moments with a smile, knowing he was the protagonist of his own story. While scrolling through his phone, lost in thought, Chitose is surprised by Yua, his classmate, who greets him with a sweet smile and asks what he's looking at. He shows her an anonymous post on social media where someone criticizes him, calling him a cheap flirt, a guy who's always clapping cheeks and collecting hearts. Chitose gets irritated by the mean comments, but Yua, in her calm way, comforts him, saying most people like him and that this gossip will soon be forgotten. He flashes a smug smile and replies that a handsome, intelligent, and charismatic guy like him has nothing to worry about. Excited, Yua shows him that they'll be in the same class again, which makes her glow with happiness. But when Chitose mentions that their whole group of friends also ended up in the same class, Yua makes a face, clearly upset that he didn't care much about her news. Soon after, they meet up with the rest of the group. Yuko greets them with a radiant smile, as if the sun itself had decided to stop by. She grabs Chitose's hands, celebrating the fact that they'll be in the same class again, and he sincerely says he'd be sad without her around. Yua, however, doesn't miss the chance to tease him, saying Chitose spent the walk to school flirting with girls. The joke leaves Yuko uncomfortable, like she just got hit with a bucket of cold water. Chitose fires back, saying Yua's just jealous, which earns him a light smack from Kenta, the basketball team's star. Beside him is Makoto, the soccer team's ace, arriving with the same lively energy. The two bump fists, and in a moment of pure competitiveness, each declares himself the group's leader before heading to class. In the classroom, Chitose is greeted by Haru, the ace of the girls' basketball team, who acts like one of the guys. She teases Chitose about his long hair, suggesting it's about time he cuts it. Beside her is Yuzuki, also on the basketball team, known as one of the prettiest girls in school, along with Yuko. But unlike Yuko's natural sweetness, Yuzuki has a striking, almost magnetic presence. Before class begins, Chitose raises his voice and declares that Team Chitose, their popular group, is officially reunited. The others, however, disagree with the name, each suggesting their own version. Their noise bothers some classmates who shoot them disapproving looks. Chitose, with his carefree attitude, just shrugs and says, "Haters will always hate," in his perfect little world. When class starts, Professor Kira, with his usual laid-back demeanor, gives a lazy greeting and wishes everyone a good year. Chitose, already used to the teacher's chill attitude, isn't surprised at all. Suddenly, Haru complains about the heat, saying the uniform with a tie is unbearable. Chitose suggests she swap the tie for a ribbon to give her neck more room, but Haru refuses, saying that would ruin her tough girl image. Out of nowhere, Kira asks Chitose to take charge of the class as usual. He walks confidently up to the podium, skipping formal introductions and joking that everyone already knows who he is. Some even call him a playboy. The joke earns a few laughs, though others roll their eyes, thinking he's trying too hard to be friendly. Chitose then brings up the class representative election, but his friends quickly suggest he just keep the position like last year. He accepts proudly, and Yuko stands up, saying she wants to be the vice representative again, even joking that she's good at taking care of things. And just like that, they become the class reps once more. At lunchtime, Chitose grabs a cold canned drink and heads up to the rooftop, where Kira is waiting, smoking a cigarette. He comments that it must be tough being a smoker, since people are always criticizing. Kira, with a sarcastic tone, says people love having a common enemy, something Chitose understands well, since he's constantly labeled a flirt. Then Kira reveals why he called him there. He shows him a picture of a student named Kenta, a lonely otaku who hasn't been to school for 2 semesters. He asks Chitose to convince him to come back. Chitose is confused, not understanding why he was chosen for this mission. When he asks what happens if he refuses, Kira points out that it would ruin his problem-solver image, something Chitose isn't willing to let happen. Determined, he accepts the challenge, convinced that his philosophy of living a beautiful life and enjoying youth must go on. He won't let it end. Later, on his way home, Chitose spots Asuka alone, absorbed in a book. He greets her, and she replies with a shy smile. Noticing the title, Chitose quotes a line from it, surprising her with his knowledge. Asuka is impressed, and the two share a moment of connection, as if last year had left traces that still echo between them. It was the first time they met. Chitose was heading home when he saw a scrawny little boy being cornered by his friends, who were calling him gross. The boy was trapped near the water, with nowhere to run. Chitose was about to step in when suddenly, a silver-haired girl jumped into the scene, leaving him speechless. With a mischievous smile, she said she wanted to join the fun. Instead of fighting, she started splashing around with the boy, completely changing the mood. She even invited the other boys to join in, and in the end, they were all laughing and playing together. When things calmed down, the boys went home happy, friends again. But Asuka, the silver-haired girl, was left drenched. When she noticed Chitose staring, she teased him for looking while she was all wet. Embarrassed, he handed her a towel and asked why she didn't just pull the boy out of the water and scold the others for being cruel. With a spark in her eyes, Asuka explained that she preferred the boys to go home messy and smiling rather than angry and fighting, even if it meant ruining her clothes. Curious, Chitose asked her name. When she replied that it meant the wind of tomorrow, he was instantly captivated. Back in the present, Asuka looks at Chitose and says he's perfectly imperfect, like a beautiful park where fireworks and toys aren't allowed, but it's still lovely just to look at. Suddenly, she throws out a hypothetical question. If she and her closest friend were both drowning, and he only had a kayak for 2 people, who would he save? Chitose tries to dodge the question, suggesting one could hold on to the side, but Asuka raises the stakes, saying the water is full of piranhas. Confidently, she declares she would save Chitose, because she likes him more than any other boy in class. He laughs, saying she's terrible at making romantic confessions, but Asuka clarifies that it wasn't a confession. She teases him, saying someone like Chitose wouldn't choose either girl. Instead, he'd put both in the kayak and let himself be eaten by piranhas just because sacrifice seems like the noble choice. Chitose laughs, denying he'd do that, but Asuka insists he's exactly that kind of person, leaving him speechless. That night, Chitose gazes at the moon, lost in thought, wondering if, among millions of people around him, he's truly living his role to the fullest. As he looks at the sky, he wonders if Kenta is staring at the same moon. Little does he know, Kenta keeps his curtains shut, isolated from the world. The next day, Yuzuki finds Chitose and notices something's bothering him. It doesn't surprise her, since Yuzuki has a natural gift for reading people's moods. He tells her about the mission Aya gave him, to convince Kenta to come back to school. Yuzuki offers to go with him, saying it's better not to go alone, and Chitose notices that even when offering help, she makes sure to look perfect. He tells her he already invited someone else, and Yuzuki, with a smile, reassures him that he can always count on her since she likes helping people she respects. After class, Chitose waits for Yua. When she arrives, he notices she put extra effort into her makeup, clearly wanting to impress him. Yua asks why he invited her, and Chitose explains that, unlike him, she doesn't have many people who dislike her. He gets a bike ready so they can go together, telling her to hold on so she doesn't fall. Yua, wary of his flirtatious reputation, just pinches his uniform instead. During the ride to Kenta's house, she compliments Chitose's broad back, saying it's surprisingly strong. He reveals that he used to be the best baseball player in the prefecture, and Yua admits that she used to watch him play before they became friends. Chitose teases her, asking if she was his fan, and she responds vaguely, half confirming, half denying. Then she asks if he has any plan to deal with Kenta. Chitose jokes that he only wanted to slow down the bike to feel her soft, delicious cannons, which earns him a stronger pinch on the neck. More serious, Yua presses the question, and he admits it makes no sense to plan without knowing what they're dealing with. When they arrive at Kenta's house, they talk to his mother through the intercom, explaining who they are and why they're there. Worried, the mother lets them in and confesses that she also doesn't understand why her son stopped going to school. They suggest trying to talk to him, and although the mother fears Kenta might react badly, they reassure her that maybe they can do something for him. When they knock on his bedroom door, Kenta immediately yells at them to go away. When Chitose introduces himself, Kenta calls him the lady killer who charms anyone, which annoys Chitose. Yua steps in to calm him, but when she introduces herself, Kenta recognizes her as one of Chitose's conquests, which makes her furious too. He accuses them of being there only because the teacher sent them. Chitose tries to connect by talking about Kenta's love for light novels, but Kenta mocks them, saying they don't even know legendary works like The Day I Reincarnated as Johnny Sins or My Dad Went Out for Cigarettes, so I had to get involved with my mom to ensure my existence. Yua admits she's not familiar with those light novels and asks Kenta for some recommendations, but he cuts her off, telling her to stop pretending to care and to go slip in the shower. Even so, Yua patiently insists that they should talk. Gradually, Kenta starts to soften, opening up to her. Noticing the moment, Chitose says maybe he should step away, but that only angers Kenta, who takes it as Chitose seeing him as a loser. He assumes Chitose can just have fun with Yua afterward while he stays there humiliated. Feeling the hostility in the air, Chitose suggests they leave, and Kenta, furious, tells them not to come back, claiming they have nothing in common. On the way back, pedaling under the orange evening sky, Yua asks if Chitose noticed anything during the visit. He can only think about Kenta's anger, joking that the kid looked like he wanted to take a bite out of him if he could. Yua laughs, understanding why Kenta might not like Chitose, but reassures him, saying he's still amazing, even with haters. They stop to buy a few light novels, and as they continue home, Yua holds tightly onto Chitose's waist, the orange sky wrapping around them both. That night, Chitose decides to change his approach. The following week, he takes Yuko to visit Kenta, believing she might help. On the bike, Chitose warns Yuko to sit properly since people might see her precious little crack. Laughing, she says she doesn't mind if a few curious ones take a peek, but when Chitose jokes and asks for a look himself, she replies with a mischievous smile that he'll only see it on that special day. Sitting behind him, Yuko comments that Chitose doesn't sweat like he used to, which disappoints her a little since she liked the smell of his sweat. She leans closer, pressing her body against his, and stays that way until they arrive at Kenta's house. There, as expected, Kenta tells Chitose and his contagious diseases to go away. Not hearing Yua, he assumes Yuko doesn't care about him either. Chitose assures him she's not like that. Yuko introduces herself, but Kenta calls her one of the targets Chitose likes to charm. Confused, she asks for an explanation, and when Chitose clarifies, Yuko gets offended, saying her charms are limited edition and Kenta's words are cruel. Kenta accuses her of being there just to impress Chitose, and Yuko honestly admits that yes, she wants to stand out to him and be the main girl in his mind while helping. But Kenta doesn't want to be an object of pity for her to score points with someone. From his words, Yuko has a realization and asks if Kenta stopped going to school because of a girl who rejected him. He confirms, saying she's just like someone trying to impress Chitose. Unlike him, Yuko says she's willing to compete with other girls to win Chitose's heart, and that his kindness toward everyone is what makes her like him. That frustrates Kenta even more. Sensing the tension, Chitose asks Yuko to go have some tea downstairs while he takes over the conversation. Understanding what happened, Chitose asks Kenta to open the door so they can talk and he can help him. Kenta refuses, telling Chitose to eat dirt and leave. When Chitose starts to walk away, Kenta secretly wishes he could be on the other side of the door with them, but moments later, he sees a shadow in the window. Suddenly, Chitose breaks the glass with a baseball bat, leaving Kenta in shock. With a grin, he invites him out to find something they have in common. Kenta says what he did is a crime, but Chitose reassures him, explaining that Kenta's mom gave permission. Sitting in front of Kenta, Chitose turns on the light and suggests an honest talk. Kenta vents, expressing his hatred toward the popular kids who look down on losers like him, saying they should treat them like real people. He complains that the popular ones only stand out for being good-looking or athletic. Chitose disagrees, explaining that while some have physical advantages, people like Yuko, Yua, and their athlete friends worked hard to get where they are. Kenta snaps back, saying losers like him can never beat the talented ones no matter how hard they try, so it's pointless. Chitose insists he's wrong, that he needs to believe in himself and his effort to eventually succeed. He starts teaching Kenta how to communicate better. When Kenta tries, he manages to talk about how Chitose started liking light novels. Skeptical, Kenta doubts Chitose really enjoys them, but he reveals he spent the past week immersed in masterpieces like In Another World as Bonnie Blue. So I had to face 1,000 challenges and I was born a loser. So I decided to work hard and become a star. To prove it, Chitose shares details from the stories, impressing Kenta, and says he's an avid reader. Kenta asks why he did all that, and Chitose replies that he hates when people judge others without knowing them, exactly what Kenta did to him. He explains that the foundation of communication is wanting to know the other person, something Yua and Yuko both tried to do with Kenta. Chitose points out that Kenta is being hypocritical by doing the very thing he criticizes in others, leaving him speechless. Then Chitose grabs a book from Kenta's shelf and starts telling the story of a man with incredible talents. He describes someone handsome, charismatic, and kind to everyone, but who also earned good grades and a solid reputation through hard work and effort. Because he was too perfect, people began to envy him and seized every mistake to ridicule him. Frustrated, he started intentionally scoring lower, thinking he'd be more accepted that way. But that only made people hate him even more. Listening to the story, Kenta grows irritated, but Chitose continues, explaining that one teacher changed everything by helping him feel comfortable with his natural talents. That mentor taught him that someone like him needed to take the lead and guide others. From then on, the guy stopped holding himself back, striving to get better and better, soaring high and living beautifully, untouchable, like the blue moon in the night sky or the shine of a Ramune bottle. Kenta asks whose story it is, and when Chitose reveals it's about himself, Kenta scoffs, telling him to stop bragging. Even so, Kenta admits he turned Chitose into the villain of his life without ever really knowing him. Chitose reflects that people idealize and demonize popularity at the same time. But Kenta doesn't see a problem with that since, to him, Chitose is winning at life. Curious, Chitose asks for an example, and Kenta points out that it's easy for him to win over any girl with his charm. Chitose agrees but says that's also a downside since he's called a flirt every day. Kenta mentions there will always be people trying to bring them down, and Chitose acknowledges it but assures him his friends are good people. He suggests Kenta focus on himself instead of others' hate. Kenta insists it's easy for Chitose to date, but he counters, saying it's complicated when even his friends have feelings for him, and rejecting them could make him the villain. Then Kenta wants to talk about what happened to him. Relieved that he's opening up, Chitose can already imagine the scene. Kenta confessed his feelings to an otaku classmate, but she cruelly rejected him, saying he wasn't a charming guy, which made him hate her and everyone around her. The two bond over sharing this painful experience, and Yuuko, listening from outside, smiles, happy with the progress. They discuss the next steps, and Kenta says that although he no longer has feelings for Miki, the girl who rejected him, he wants to become popular and asks Chitose to help him. Chitose hesitates, saying he doesn't want to spend all his time with him and that Kenta needs to take charge of his own life. But true to his principles, Chitose agrees to help him for 3 weeks. He asks Kenta what his goals are, and Kenta replies that he wants to show Miki and everyone who mocked him who's really in charge. Chitose supports the motivation, joking that Miki missed her chance to be with an amazing guy like Kenta. However, Kenta admits he's afraid to face Miki, and girls in general. With a teasing smile, Chitose says Kenta still hasn't experienced the softness of a warm embrace. That catches Kenta's attention, and Chitose encourages him to become a better version of himself so that one day he can find his place in the sun. Later, Kenta goes downstairs to apologize to his mother for the trouble and to Yuko for offending her. Yuko, smiling, says it's fine but suggests he take a bath. She even helps by cutting Kenta's hair, while Chitose proposes that the first step is a complete transformation. He puts Kenta on a diet and confiscates his phone, forbidding him from using social media for now. When Kenta asks why, Chitose explains that he needs to understand why attacking people anonymously isn't healthy. Then, Chitose sits with Yuko, who's beaming at the result. He says he just encouraged Kenta to move forward and look for new opportunities. Yuko praises him, saying his attitude makes people like him, just like she does. Then, Chitose asks her not to bring up their past, but Yuko hopes that one day he'll open his heart to her because she has so much to express. The next morning, Kenta is nervous about returning to school after months away. Chitose reassures him, saying nervousness is the first step toward real change. He walks into class with Kenta and introduces him with a light joke, teasing that Kenta disappeared from school because of a broken heart. Despite Kenta's tension, Chitose encourages him to make people laugh. His group of friends joins in, teasing the rejection lightly, which gets some laughs from the class. Kenta feels uneasy, but Chitose explains the difference between jokes and insults, teaching him to distinguish the two. When Professor Aya enters, he sees Kenta and realizes Chitose completed the mission. He gives the class some time to help Kenta readjust. During lunch, the girls get curious about Kenta's meal, and he explains that he's on a diet, following Chitose's advice to become more attractive. They ask what happened, and Kenta shares that he was part of an otaku club where he had a crush on Miki. But she chose another guy from the club, better looking and with abs, even after Kenta worked up the courage to confess, which broke his heart. Chitose adds that Miki called Kenta a fat loser before rejecting him. Everyone shows support, praising his courage for confessing. Later, Makoto confronts Chitose for bringing someone new into the group without warning. He warns that someone like Kenta doesn't change that easily. Chitose, however, disagrees with Makoto and firmly believes Kenta can become a better person. On the rooftop, he sits with Aya, who praises him for completing the mission in style. Thoughtful, Chitose asks what it truly means to live life for oneself. Aya lights a cigarette, reflects for a moment, and replies that most people doubt their own judgment and purpose, always comparing themselves to others or even trying to belittle them. To live fully, he explains, one must trust their own inner compass. That makes Chitose wonder if his is still as steady as before. A week later, Kenta has already lost a few pounds, as if he were following an athlete's regimen. Chitose and Yuko take him shopping for new clothes, wanting to boost his look. They start with glasses, which Yuko thinks make Kenta look cool. After shopping, Yuko suggests stopping by a restaurant where Chitose will meet his friends later. Sitting together, Kenta shows Chitose how Miki, the girl he used to love, mocked him for inviting her out with other friends even after he had left their group chat. Chitose laughs, finding the situation awkward, and Yuko asks Kenta what he hopes to achieve by reconnecting with friends who abandoned him. Kenta replies that he wants them to see how much he's changed for the better. That gives Yuko an idea. She calls a waiter to take a picture of the three of them. Kenta is amazed when he sees the photo, noticing his transformation, and Yuko points out that they look like best friends. Chitose reinforces that Kenta should always remember the effort he put into improving himself and keep the mindset of never stopping his evolution. Hearing this, Kenta silently promises not to waste his friend's support. Watching Kenta smile, Chitose thinks to himself that he's amazing for truly changing and hopes that one day Kenta will look back on this moment with pride. Days later at school, Chitose is walking to class when he hears some classmates picking on Kenta, asking why a pathetic loser like him is hanging out with Chitose's group. Yua tries to defend him, but the bullies tell her to stop pretending to be a princess, calling her fake. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Chitose hears everything alongside Yuzuki and Makoto. Furious, he fears this could ruin Kenta's progress and asks the two for help handling the situation. They enter the classroom with their usual relaxed attitude, and Chitose confronts the leader of the bullies, saying he doesn't even know who he is. The guy, offended, reminds him they faced each other in a baseball game and that his name is Uemura. Makoto joins the conversation and teases the tough girl, Aiko, who gives in quickly but snaps back, saying Chitose and Makoto should hang out with her instead of ugly girls like Yua and Yuzuki. Uemura questions why Chitose is hanging out with someone like Kenta, and he firmly replies that he chooses his friends, including Kenta. Feeling the tension rise, Makoto tries to calm things down, but Uemura insists, saying he hates guys like Chitose who never fail and that Kenta is trash, not worth his time. He shoves Kenta, leaving him shaken by the incident. Later, Kenta asks Chitose what he should have done against the bullies. Chitose advises him to keep his head high and stay true to his convictions, because that way, other people's words will never hit him. On the way home, Chitose feels responsible for what happened, since he was the one who encouraged Kenta's transformation. He fears that if Kenta continues down this path, more people will hurt him, leaving permanent scars. At that moment, Haru shows up and invites him out. They go to the sports field, where they help each other stretch. They talk about Chitose's past as a baseball player and why he quit. Although Chitose pretends the sport doesn't matter much, Haru calls him a liar, knowing how dedicated he once was. Then she challenges him to a basketball game. If he loses, he has to tell her what's bothering him. If she loses, she has to reveal how many fingers she uses at night. Chitose adds that the loser also buys dinner for the winner. In the game, Haru wins and encourages him to open up. Chitose confesses he's afraid Kenta's plan to impress his old friends will fail and wants to do something to make sure it works. Haru bluntly calls him an idiot, saying he's already done everything he could for Kenta and now needs to trust that he can handle it. Just like a coach trusts their players after training them, she says Chitose is underestimating Kenta's determination and shouldn't think he's that important. They spend the rest of the day together, and Chitose demands a rematch. Whoever swings higher on the swing will one day have to tell the other their biggest secret. Under the dark blue sky, with stars shining above, they swing high, and Chitose silently wishes that one day he'll be able to stand on his own 2 feet. Later that night, Chitose joins a call with Yuzuki, and they start joking around, getting into a playful roleplay. Yuzuki asks why he helped Kenta. Chitose replies playfully that it was because Aya blackmailed him, but Yuzuki disagrees, saying that's not true. To her, Chitose did it because that's who he is, a guy who sees himself as righteous and has a savior complex. The statement catches Chitose off guard, but he can't deny it. Yuzuki says he owes her one now, and Chitose, curious, asks what she wants. Suddenly, she playfully asks him to be her boyfriend. Chitose is surprised, but Yuzuki laughs, saying she got too carried away with the roleplay. He joins in on the joke and, with a mischievous grin, asks what the details are of what she's wearing underneath. Teasing, Yuzuki replies that it's blue, like the night sky, with a clasp on the back, leaving Chitose so intrigued that he can barely sleep that night. A week later, Kenta is visibly thinner and has even gained some muscle. It's almost the last day of Chitose's mentorship, and he encourages him, assuring Kenta that he'll show the bullies he's changed. But Kenta hesitates, confessing that he's not sure he even wants to prove anything to them anymore. Later, they play soccer, and Uemura challenges Chitose to a match, with the condition that the loser faces a humiliating penalty. Confident, Chitose accepts. Kenta worries about the challenge, but Chitose reassures him, saying it's just a game and he'll pass the ball to him several times. Kenta, who's never been good at sports, feels nervous, but Chitose insists he should just have fun since he's not part of the bet. When the game begins, Chitose and Makoto carry the team but try to help Kenta score. He fails miserably, and everyone laughs, shaking his confidence. Chitose helps him up and notices how seriously Kenta takes everything. To Chitose, excluding someone who isn't athletic isn't fun. That's why he wanted to include Kenta. But each mistake only made Kenta's insecurity grow stronger. In the final play, they try to pass the ball to Kenta, but he refuses to move. Chitose then takes the initiative and scores an impressive goal with animation worthy of a sports anime. Even so, their team loses. And while Chitose carries out his penalty, Uemura says something to Kenta. Before heading home, Yuko talks to Chitose about Kenta's performance, and they share some light, harmless jokes. However, Kenta overhears their conversation and confronts them, accusing them of bad-mouthing him behind his back. Chitose assures him it was just a joke and that he'd say it to his face, but that only makes Kenta angrier. He says Uemura was right, and that he's nothing but a clown to Chitose. Yuko tries to explain that he's mistaken, but hurt. Kenta says he doesn't care anymore since tomorrow is their last day together. He vents, saying how hard it is for someone like him who's bad at sports to be dragged into playing by a popular guy like Chitose, just to humiliate himself and watch Chitose steal the spotlight in the end. It makes him feel like a complete joke. Yuko confronts him, saying that after weeks together, Kenta should know that Chitose would never laugh at someone behind their back. Her words make him pause, but Chitose takes responsibility, apologizing for crossing the line between teasing and bullying, which ended up hurting Kenta. Feeling guilty, Kenta runs off, but Chitose yells after him, wishing him luck on his meeting with his old friends and reminding him that he believes in him. On the way home, Yuko calls Chitose a hero for trusting and helping someone like Kenta. She admits that deep down, she didn't really believe Kenta could change. Chitose denies being a hero, but Yuko insists, saying she has a good eye for genuinely good people. Meanwhile, Kenta, acting like a complete idiot, heads to the restaurant, carrying a heavy guilt for the outburst he had with Chitose and Yuko, realizing he just threw away the friendship he had with them. But after 3 intense weeks of training under Chitose's guidance, he refuses to let all of that amount to nothing, or to disappoint the guy who made the biggest impact in his life. Inside the restaurant, the girl he loved, Mickey, and the 2 guys who used to hang around with her are left speechless by his transformation and immediately start mocking him. But remembering Chitose's advice, Kenta diffuses the situation by saying he just wanted to become more sociable. They shoot back that a loser like him could never be sociable, but again recalling Chitose's advice, Kenta replies that he's trying, that he wants to feel comfortable in his own skin. Everyone sits down and tries to tear him down, saying that someone like Kenta doesn't belong in a social spot like a cafe and that they've been happier since he left their group. They add that he must have hired Ozik or someone to fix his looks. Kenta says his new friends helped him on his journey. That surprises Mickey, and she asks seriously if he's already forgotten her. Kenta says he's not going to interfere with her romance with Ren anymore. That pisses them off, and Mickey blurts out that she was only nice to him because she felt sorry for a loser like him. They try to convince him that his new friends are just using him. Then Kenta realizes they're talking exactly the way he used to, arrogant and full of hate. But Chitose still reached out to him. Suddenly, Ren, out of jealousy, reveals that even when Kenta was trying to get close to Mickey, he was already sleeping with her behind his back. Then, like a stab to the chest, he shows on his phone that every time Kenta sent sweet messages to Mickey, she forwarded them to Ren, and Ren laughed at his pathetic messages. He adds that it was Ren who dictated what Mickey replied to Kenta, making sure he stayed in love. In other words, Kenta fell for the words coming from Ren's mouth, not Mickey's. Hearing that, Kenta feels the knife of hatred pierce his heart, realizing his first love never truly existed. While everyone laughs at his pain, Kenta understands that this is karma for kicking away the people who genuinely cared about him. In his mind, he just wants to go back to his room, lock himself up like before, with nowhere to go and no one to rely on, apologizing to Chitose and Yuko for failing to change. But suddenly, Chitose's encouraging words echo in his head, and the man himself appears beside him, saying he came to keep his promise to back him up. The others are confused about who this handsome Chad is, and Chitose introduces himself as Kenta's classmate and friend. He asks Kenta if he counts as a friend, and Kenta confirms, saying he's way too kind. Ren warns that Kenta is a disgusting otaku, and Chitose replies that he's going with him to Comic-Con. With Chitose's hand on his shoulder, Kenta sees that Chitose is someone who, even when hated by people like he used to be, never abandons others. A life philosophy he lives by, and that Kenta deeply values. Ren tells Chitose that Kenta is a pervert who used to send tons of messages to Mickey and would probably do the same to Chitose's girlfriend. But Chitose doesn't even flinch and asks if Mickey never actually had feelings for Kenta. When they confirm she didn't, Chitose tells Kenta that means his first love is still waiting for him, because you never truly lose something that was never real. Chitose adds that he shouldn't waste his feelings of love on people like that, but save them for someone who truly matters. Annoyed by his calmness, Ren stands up and charges at Chitose, accusing him of looking for a fight, but Chitose reminds him that they're the ones who picked a fight with his friend. The bullies insist he shouldn't waste time on someone like Kenta, that Chitose would ditch him anyway. Ren explodes in anger, yelling that someone like Kenta never changes, that a loser will always be a loser. But Chitose reaches his limit. He bares his teeth in fury, telling Ren that Kenta is someone who took the first step to becoming the best version of himself. And despite the pain, he's someone who aims for the moon, the same beautiful moon everyone looks up at. Unlike Ren, who chose to stay trapped as a pathetic loser who always drags others down when they rise. Hearing that, the whole cafe freezes, and Kenta drowns in his own tears. Seeing the guy who usually hid his emotions and smiled now furious because of him, makes Kenta finally see a path forward, one that pushes him to keep moving on. He sees that encouragement in Chitose, the man he calls his hero. At that moment, Yuko shows up, drawing everyone's attention and breaking the heavy mood in the cafe just by being there. She greets Kenta and messes up his hair, showing everyone that Kenta has a hot girl as a friend. Yuko tells Mickey and the others that enough's enough and asks Kenta to say his final words to the old friends he's leaving behind. With his new friends' support, Kenta tells the old ones that he's aiming for the moon and won't look back, closing the chapter of his miserable past life. Later, as they walk back, Chitose and Yuko assure Kenta he did the right thing, especially after what they did to him. Chitose says he hopes Mickey and the others learned their lesson, since that aligns with his philosophy of living beautifully. Then Chitose reminds Kenta that 3 weeks have already passed and, as they agreed, their relationship is over. Kenta replies that the day he broke the window was the day Chitose broke open his closed heart. He promises he'll start his own story and asks if one day he can stand beside them with his head held high. He wants them to be his friends. He expresses his gratitude for everything they've done and says he'll treasure their memories forever. But then both burst out laughing, and Yuko explains that Kenta got it wrong. Chitose meant the end of their teacher-student relationship. They remind him they're already friends. And even though Kenta feels unworthy, they assure him he is indeed their friend, which makes him incredibly happy. Later, Chitose meets Asuka at their usual meeting spot and tells her Kenta's story and how he came out of his shell. Asuka thinks it's a beautiful story and says he's changed a bit. She points out that his idea of being a hero has evolved. He's gone from a normal hero to a complicated one, the warmest to others while being the coldest to himself. He counters that she's the real heroine for helping the bullied boy that day. But she insists that, unlike him, she's just an ordinary girl who shouldn't be put on a pedestal and can't carry as many people as he does. Then she asks if he has plans for the upcoming Golden Week holiday, and Chitose teases her, saying he'll ask her out on a date then. But even though she thinks it would be a lovely day, she insists they stay the way they are now. She's afraid going further might change or ruin what they have. The next day, after closing another chapter, this time with a new friend in Kenta, Chitose bikes to the meetup spot. When he arrives, there's only one person waiting, Yuzuki, who showed up early like him since both hate making others wait. They eat something, joke around, tease each other, but Yuzuki suddenly gets serious and asks Chitose to be her boyfriend. She says they're alike, so they should date. Chitose asks why she even wants a boyfriend, and she answers that, like any girl, she wants to date a hot guy like him. But Chitose knows she's not superficial. He admits they're similar in the way they wear masks to hide their true selves, but hearing that only makes Yuzuki more convinced they're made for each other, and dating someone who lets her be herself is perfect. But Chitose shuts her down, knowing he'd never fall easily for her sweet words like other guys. That makes Yuzuki's heart race, and she teases that he just makes her want him more. After their talk, Yuzuki finally confesses she thinks someone's been following her. When Chitose asks who, she suspects boys from another school called Yakin, which Chitose recognizes as a place full of delinquents. He understands why she needs a boyfriend, and Yuzuki makes it official by asking for 2 things from him as her boyfriend. 1 is to be the perfect boyfriend, so the stalker gives up on her, and 2 is to be ready to deal with the stalker if he tries anything dirty. Chitose warns her that he's never fought in his life, but Yuzuki begs him, saying he's her only hope. When he tries to refuse, she pleads, saying he can do whatever he wants with her, as much as he wants and as many times as he wants. She admits it'll take his time and energy, so she's fine enduring whatever he asks, even if it's something crazy or degenerate, like licking his toes. Hearing that, Chitose agrees to the deal, and knowing she'll do whatever he says, he asks to use her to blow off stress by playing basketball, with sweat and loud moans. They stop for a break, and Yuzuki comments that he's not the kind of guy who cheers girls up, but Chitose reminds her that people like them don't like to be seen as weak. Still, he tells her she can rely on him anytime she needs to. She worries that he won't be there for her, but Chitose assures her that if she calls his name, he'll show up, just like a hero would. The next morning, Yuko is shocked to see Chitose arriving at school with Yuzuki, immediately suspecting something's going on. Then, as a declaration, Yuzuki announces to the entire class that she's dating Chitose, leaving everyone speechless, and Yuko refuses to believe it, saying Yuzuki must be using him for something she needs. Yuko adds that there's no way Yuzuki would actually date Chitose, but Yuzuki snaps back that the same goes for Yuko, which pisses her off. So Yuko decides to try to win him back from Yuzuki. Later, Chitose explains to his friends what's really happening, and they all grow concerned for the two of them. They support the plan and even offer to help keep an eye on Yuzuki's stalker. Then Chitose tells Kaji what's going on, And while the old pervert congratulates him for dating a busty hottie, he also reminds him to be smart about it and says if he needs help dealing with the stalker, he can count on him. After class, while waiting for Yuzuki to finish basketball practice, a classmate named Hinami approaches him. She asks if the dating rumor is true, and when Chitose confirms, Hinami says they don't suit each other at all. Chitose scolds her for talking bad about people, but Hinami replies that it's better to say things to someone's face than behind their back, and that she'd say it to Yuzuki's face too. Then she asks to exchange contacts, and Chitose agrees. But when Yuzuki leaves practice, Hinami quickly slips away. Yuzuki shows up with Haru, and Haru tells Chitose that Yuko lost her body wipes and needs to borrow Yuzuki's to smell nice for him. Yuzuki gets flustered and tells her to shut up. On the way back, Yuzuki tells Chitose she's sure she packed her wipes. Then they both realize some creep must have broken into the locker room and stolen them, who they suspect is the stalker. To lighten the mood, Chitose jokes that it's weird someone stole the wipes instead of her valuable sweaty towels, or even her peach-patterned underwear, which makes Yuzuki blush. Then Yuzuki suggests they should go on a date like normal couples, but Chitose reminds her she has an important game that weekend, so he proposes she focus on that while he cheers for her like a good boyfriend. He even adds that if she wins, he'll take her on a date and let her do whatever she wants, which fires her up to give it her all. She thanks him, and when he asks why, she doesn't answer. The next day in the library, Yua shows up wearing glasses, surprising Yuzuki. Chitose explains he suggested Yua start wearing contacts since she looks too sexy in glasses, and Yuzuki mentally notes that down after hearing it. At that moment, Chitose spots some students from Yakan outside and warns Yuzuki, which scares her. When she notices them staring at her, Yuzuki clings to Chitose and says she doesn't recognize them. Chitose leaves Yuzuki behind and decides to face the guys alone, all while Yuzuki and the other girls watch. The guys approach Chitose acting friendly and ask him to introduce Yuzuki to them and their seniors. Chitose says that as her boyfriend, he wants Yuzuki all to himself. But the guys tell him there's a rumor that Yuzuki's a slut, so they want to pass her around like a basketball and score a shot. Chitose asks them directly if they're the ones who've been following Yuzuki, which offends them, and they start getting aggressive. One of them tries to act polite by shaking hands but grips tightly, but Chitose squeezes even harder, making him flinch in pain. The others move in on Chitose, saying they'll put him in a wheelchair, but Chitose's friends, Kenta and Kaoru, show up to back him up. The guys freeze when they see them and back off, warning that their senior will come after Chitose later. Afterward, Chitose and Yuzuki sit by the riverside, and she apologizes for making him confront the stalkers and nearly get hurt. He covers her with his jacket while she cries and says he'll wait for the Yuzuki he knows to come back. After calming down, she says she wants to eat katsudon, and he sees she's back to her usual cheerful self. But just to be safe, he teaches her to always kick a guy in the balls, but quickly adds not to test it on him. She helps him put his jacket back on and rests her head against his broad back, whispering that he was amazing and thanking him for protecting her.